The title of this message is, When Hard Times Come, Be a Student, Not a Victim. When hard times come, be a student, not a victim. Let me ask you, what do you do when your world caves in? How does a Christian respond when hard times come? How are we supposed to respond when hard time comes? What can we do to keep our faith strong? I know you've seen all of the damage from the hurricanes in the Carolinas and all up that way and in Florida, and those people are truly going through situations where the world is caved in. How are we supposed to respond as Christians? What if that was us? How would we respond? You know, when we go through difficult times, hard times, we're going to face those questions. And we're going to face hard times eventually. You may not have had hard times already, but I can promise you that at some point you're going to have hard times, difficult times that you're going to go through in this life. When everything that we believe is going to be put on the firing line. Everything we believe is going to be tested and tried. There are some people in this life who go through life as professional victims. You know anybody like that? Some people go through life as professional victims, always talking about how they've been mistreated. A victim says, "Why did this happen to me?" But a student says, "What can I learn from this?" A victim blames other people for their problems. And a student asks, "How much of this did I bring on myself?" A victim looks at everyone and cries out, "Life isn't fair." A student looks at the same situation and says, "What happened to me could have happened to anyone." Victims believe that their hard times come from God and that God is punishing them. But a student understands that God allows hard times not to punish us, but to help us grow. A victim would rather complain than find a solution. And a student has no time to complain because he's busy making the best of his situation. And then a victim begs God to remove the problems of life so he may be happy. A student, though, learns that working through the problems of life allows him to have true happiness. If you spend enough time in God's Word, particularly in the New Testament and in the Old Testament, you'll discover two truths. Well, let me say this. You won't discover just two truths. But I'm going to talk about this morning two truths that you will find out. Number one, whether we want to admit it or not, trials are common in most Christians. And a lot of Christians. No one on this earth is exempt from troubles. No one on this earth is going to get a free ride to heaven, because at some point in time, trouble is going to come your way. Now, like I said earlier, it may not have happened yet, but remember this sermon tomorrow, because it could happen tomorrow. May it be a month down the road. And second, this is probably harder to understand. The trials that we go through are not as important and doesn't matter as much as to how we respond to it. And you say, well, I don't know about it. But too often we get too focused on the trials and the difficulties, and God is much more concerned. Yes, He's concerned about what we're going through, but God is much more concerned about how we're going to react to whatever it is that we're going through. Why? Because really and truly, we don't have the choice about the bad things that happen to us. Usually, when bad things come along, most of the time they just happen. May not be a reason for it. But the one thing that can happen is how we respond to whatever the problem is. We can respond in faith or unbelief, in humility or arrogance, in forgiveness, or we can get mad, or in hope, or we can respond with despair. There's a guy by the name of Roy Zuck who was a professor emeritus at Dallas Theological Seminary. And this is what he said, and I read this week, and I thought, that makes a lot of sense. For the child of God, there are no accidents, only incidents. For the child of God, there are no accidents, only incidents. You say, why do you say that? Because I say that because nothing happens without God knowing what's happening and what's going on. Even in the future, He knows. So, I personally, don't believe in accidents. I don't believe in fate. I don't believe in luck. I believe that everything that happens is because it's in God's will. God allows it to happen for different reasons. We have troubles. Yeah. Heartache. We have those difficulties. We go through disappointments, loss, failures. But accidents? No. Romans 8:28 says this. Well, Paul said, and I'm reading this from a translation called The Voice now. Probably, if you don't have that, you may not be aware of it, or may not even know it exists, and I don't use it that often, but I was looking for something, a verse, an interpretation of a verse that could explain it, what I was trying to say, in simpler terms, okay? The Voice says this: we are confident that God is able to orchestrate everything to work towards something good and beautiful when we love Him and accept His invitation to live according to His plan. He didn't say some things. He didn't say good things or bad things, but everything He can make to work for our good, towards something good, something beautiful. In other words, like I said before, everything that happens in this world is either caused by God or allowed by God. And I think we have to believe that as Christians and understand it as truth. There's not a third category when it comes to these things. It's either allowed by God or it's either caused by God. Nothing just happens. Nothing is caused by someone or something that is outside of God's control. That means there's no such thing, like I said, as chance or fate or luck. And as Christians, we have to understand that. That's part of our faith. That's part of our understanding that, yes, God, I understand and I know and I believe that you're in control of everything. Not just some things, but everything. The good, the bad, the ugly. And you say, well, okay, but what about Satan? Even Satan has the power only that God allows him to have. See, we get all confused about all these things and think the devil makes us do this, the devil makes us to do that. Well, the devil can tempt us to do this and tempt us to do that, but when it comes to falling for whatever tricks or things that he has coming along our way, whether we fall for them or not is our own problem, is our own situation. Because he can only do so much. Because that's God's will. Well, it's true. He can tempt us, and he can do so, and I think in three ways. He tempts us to doubt God's goodness. You know, you're going through difficult times, and the last thing you want to hear is this voice whispering in your ear. And if you've been here, you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Hey, God's forgotten you. He doesn't care anymore. He isn't as good as he says he is. You ever heard those voices? Have you? Satan whispering in your ear, telling you, what's all this? What? See, I told you God wasn't all that he cracked up to be. That's one way he tempts us. He tempts us to retaliate against others with anger and resentment when we're going through difficult times. He tempts us to give in to despair and discouragement when we're sick, when we feel like we'll never get better again. He tells us, you might as well just give up. Maybe you've lost a job and you feel like you're not qualified to do anything else because they've told you that this last job that's what you were unfit or whatever. But that's just a couple of things he does. You see, there are multitudes of other things that the Satan can try to tempt us to let down our guard, to not trust as much in God as we have, to let our faith falter. And little by little, he'll just keep nudging us and nudging us and nudging us until we finally just give up, give in, give out, whichever way you want to look at it. Because of the pressures that we're under and our attitudes begin to slide, and before long, before we know it, we're headed in the wrong direction. But it doesn't have to be that way. Remember what I said about the title of the sermon? Y'all remember? Did you write it down? When hard times come, be a student, not a victim. The reason our faith and we go through difficult times is to strengthen us, folks. God doesn't allow these things to happen or make these things happen to punish us. That's not the kind of God we serve. He allows us to go through these things so that we can strengthen our faith, to refine us, so that we can become more like Christ and be able to better serve out our purpose here on earth. To rely more fully on God and develop the character and perseverance that's necessary to overcome any obstacle that may come our way. Because in these times of difficulties, in these times of trials, it allows us to grow deeper in faith, grow closer to God, and better understand His plans for our life. It allows us to be a better witness for Him. It shows people that as a Christian, we can go through these difficult situations, these hard times, and be strong. And give us a chance to possibly tell someone where that strength is coming from and who it's in. That it's in God. And that we have it because of our relationship with Him. Is it easy? No. It's not easy. But if we become students of the hard times that we go through, if we learn, if we grow through those times, and our faith is strengthened like they should be, when we come out on the other end, however far that is and however long it takes, we can know that God was with us through it all. And it was through Him that we had the strength to go through all of these things. Some of you may be going through them now. I don't know. Everybody has their own hard times. Different things, different situations. But if we become students of what we're going through and learn what is taking place and apply that learning to our hearts, then our strength and our faith is stronger. And we become stronger Christians and become better witnesses for God. I don't know what you're going through this morning. Some I may have an idea, some I don't have a clue. I know some of the things I'm going through. And yes, it's hard to be a student when you're going through those times. But God has shown me how to learn from the trials and the things that are going on. And to be a better person and a better Christian for it.